think we're good. Okay, we'll start with a little introduction here. So right now, candidates are, Libertarians are collecting signature across the country for Joe Jorgensen, Spike Cohen. In Wisconsin, we need about 2,000 signatures. We're trying to get more than that, obviously. Our campaign here in Wisconsin had our signatures challenged, and that was by both the Democrat and Republican parties here. Just enough signatures to put us under the minimum and deny our ballot access. So right now, more signatures that we can get, the better. So that's what we're aiming for here in Wisconsin. And Steve, you know all about this. As chair, you're chair of the Libertarian Party of Illinois.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
I wanted to start by asking you, you guys have elected Libertarians in Illinois, and a lot of people here in Wisconsin, I always hear from people that, Libertarians have to work at the local level to get on the ballot. You guys do have elected Libertarians. Could you kind of tell people about the range of elected Libertarians you have already?
Sure. So the majority of the elected Libertarians we have right now, in fact, I think all of them except for one, is serving in a nonpartisan office. So technically, there's no Libertarian next to their name if you go look them up on, the city council website or whatever. But they're members of our party, and we help them get elected. It's much easier to get a Libertarian elected in a nonpartisan race because that word Libertarian doesn't come next to their name. So in a city council election in almost every place in Illinois, there is no party affiliation. So people get to know the candidates a little bit more. And I'm sure and Libertarians preach this all the time. If people were more open to the idea of looking into the Libertarian Party, I think a lot of people would see that they are Libertarian, at least to some extent. We do have one elected Libertarian who is in a partisan position, and he has a really interesting story. He's running for re-election this fall, actually. He's on the county board in Kankakee County, which is just south of Chicago, and his name's Jim Byrne. Jim was actually originally elected as a Republican and switched parties, which you can do in Illinois. Some states have laws against doing that if you're a public official. Illinois doesn't. So he's the only elected Libertarian in a partisan position, but we've got a handful in nonpartisan, and including a few that are in some sizable communities that are in some prominent roles. So a lot of what we've done to be successful at that is to do a lot of door-to-door campaigning. The resources are a little thin when you're a Libertarian. So as much as you can do grassroots is good.
For candidates everywhere, ballot access requirements are, a critical part of running, and that's at every level of office. And I wanted to ask, sorry, I have our second guest messaging me right now.
No problem.
Could you give us an idea of what standard ballot access requirements are in your state?
Sure. Illinois is one of the worst states as far as ballot access is concerned. Not only is the threshold to become an established political party extremely high, you need statewide, you need 5% of the vote in a statewide race. Most surrounding states are 2 or 3%. There are other states who are even lower than that. There are a couple other states that have 5%, but 5%'s the highest in the country. So the path to ballot access is difficult to achieve. But before you're allowed to do that, the signature requirements are another thing that makes Illinois particularly difficult to run candidates in. For example, I'll give you 2 examples. So the first one, obviously, the presidential, governor, all the statewide tickets need 25,000 minimum signatures. And you mentioned getting 2,000 for Joe and Spike to get on the ballot. Imagine 25,000, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's a minimum number. You guys know you want some padding on top of that. So we try every cycle to double that. So in 2018, when we ran a governor candidate and then the other statewide races, because we're allowed to run them as a slate together, we ended up collecting 47,000 signatures, and we weren't even challenged. So that was good news for us. We did a great job with validity. We made sure that those were good signatures and not just thrown together. So that was a really successful cycle, but we were challenged several times in the past, including in 2016 with the Gary Johnson campaign, the one that we survived. So challenges are not uncommon in Illinois because those signatures are so high. And it's from both of the old parties. Neither one of them want us on the ballot. Republicans in particular in Illinois come after us pretty hard. The reason being they have a hard enough time competing with the Democrats on their own that they don't want us on the ballot either. But Democrats have gotten us off the ballot several times in the past as well. I'll give you a second example, and this is on a local level. I ran for county board in 2018. And the county I live in is one of only 2 counties in Illinois where we have established party status because Gary Johnson got more than 5% in our county. So we're able to run county candidates just like Democrats and Republicans. So when I ran for county board, I needed 3 signatures to get on the ballot. 3, that's it. And mine counts as 1. So I really only needed 2 because we were an established party. If we did not have that established party, living in the same district with the same rules without that established party status, I would have had to have about 600 minimum. And that would have obviously that probably would have turned into 1,000 signatures instead of 3, not 300, 3. So the laws in Illinois are extremely rigged toward the political duopoly and have been for quite some time.
So, with the stay-at-home orders and the public safety instructions we've had, everything's been uncertain, especially for candidates collecting signatures. When did it become clear to you in your state that the challenges were going to be more than usual?
Well, honestly, we're in pretty good shape in Illinois this year. And the reason being is that we filed suit against the state of Illinois and our governor, J.B. Pritzker, and won, basically saying, sorry, my dog's in the way, basically saying that because we can't petition this year, because our petitioning period started late March, which is right after the shutdown happened from COVID-19. No one was out doing anything. It would have been impossible to petition and unsafe. So we filed lawsuit against the state of Illinois. We won. So Joe and Spike are automatically on the ballot in Illinois. And so is our Senate candidate, Danny Maloof, because we had a Senate candidate in 2016, that automatically made the ballot. So any race that in the last 2 elections that we made the ballot for, we had automatic ballot access this year. So that really helped out a lot as far as not having to get those. Now we still have to get signatures for any down ticket candidates. So state House, state Senate, congressional races, and then obviously further down county and things like that. So we're not out of the woods petitioning completely, but the presidential ticket and our senator candidate both got on the ballot. So
that's a big hurdle.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's been my experience while ballot requirements seem to go without notice with voters. I don't know if that's been your experience. There's a lot of attention to the aspect of absentee voting, but ballot requirements. Has it been your experience that this is an issue that really isn't a priority to a lot of voters? What do you hear from people in Illinois?
Well, it's not a priority for most voters. And the reason it's not a priority for most voters is because there's not very many lawmakers talking about it. It's not in the news cycle because Republicans and Democrats who are already elected don't want to give up the power that they already have. So they don't talk about it. There have been some friendly legislators here in Illinois who have tried to bring bills to the floor, but every single time it gets held up in committee and never sees the light of day. So I don't know if we'll ever see meaningful ballot reform in Illinois. We're going to keep lobbying our current lawmakers to do that. But it's been an unfruitful exercise up until this point.
Are there any other ideas for long-term solutions that you guys are thinking about or considering, or anything that you've heard of that would bring lasting ballot requirement solutions?
It would either have to come through the legislature, which again we lobby our friendly folks all the time who are in the legislature and making laws and down in Springfield, but the only other way to do it would be through a statewide referendum. And for a statewide referendum, you need 500,000 signatures to get on the ballot for something like that. And realistically, that's impossible. In fact, there was a group that was trying to pass a fair maps resolution in Illinois. And they got the 500,000 signatures and some padding. They had like 600,000 some, and they got challenged and thrown off. So, yeah. So to get a binding referendum on the ballot statewide in Illinois is nearly impossible. So it's up to the legislature to do something, and we'll see if it ever happens. I'm confident that if we keep going down that route, then it'll eventually happen, but it has not happened yet. The only other option is to achieve that 5% mark on a statewide level, in which case we're then playing with the same rules that the Democrats and Republicans are. So I'm totally on board with that. That is the most realistic path to getting more libertarians on the ballot. As hard as it's been to try and achieve, and we've come pretty close the last few cycles. We had a candidate in 2014 who got 4 3/4%. We had a candidate in 2018 who got over 4%. Gary Johnson did very well here in Illinois statewide, but we just haven't. That 5% mark has eluded us. So. But it's still the most realistic path to getting more libertarians on the ballot.
All right. I wanted to thank you for joining. We're going to go to our next guest tonight. Thanks for all you do, and please keep it up.
No problem. Thanks, Reese. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Take care. All right. We have Robert Slamka from Assembly District 78.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Rob. And it looks like you figured out the issues. I'm so glad you did. All right. So we're going to start here. Thanks for joining, Rob. You're running to represent the 78th District. Rob, you and I got to know each other through our campaigns being challenged for ballot access. I wanted to talk to you about those challenges, but before that, could you kind of let people know who you are and why you're running for the 78th District?
Yeah, absolutely, Reese. Thank you. I had a fairly long history in labor. I was a sheet metal worker for 32 years out of Local 18, spent most of the time in my home territory south of Milwaukee and Oak Creek. Recently moved to Madison about 7.5 years ago in early 2013 while we were gearing up for the next battle with Scott Walker, knowing that right to work was coming. And while I was here, I attended a lot of union meetings and I asked a lot of questions, and people were like, who is this guy? And in the process, I found out that it really didn't seem like there was going to be much of an effort with the right to work. And I was kind of shaking my head going, this is this terrible thing that's coming, and there's got to be more interest in this. So when I really knew that it was coming in October of 2014, when they asked that question to Scott Walker, Governor Walker, are you going to pass right to work? And he said it would be a distraction. So I knew that meant it was coming. And the conversation that I had at the union meeting was, right to work's coming. What are we going to do about it? And the business manager said, well, we'll educate our members. And that's all he said. And then a moment later, I was being shuttled off to another room where the business rep from Eau Claire, Craig Wagner, started asking me all kinds of questions. And I said, Craig, do we have anybody up in your district that I could rely on if I'm going to go help fight this? And he said, geez, I can't think of anyone. Well, later on, I found out that they really must have had something going on that didn't involve membership at all. And really what it looked like was, it turned out that Scott Walker had a deal with the building trades unions that had them step down during Act 10 and clear the path for him to be able to take collective bargaining away from public sector workers. And of course, this is pretty hush-hush. And it basically revealed itself when I went to a rally that was held in February, I think it was the 24th, a Tuesday, before we had the first hearing on right to work. And it happened at Monona Terrace. And at that particular event, I had planned to commandeer a few of the workers, go to the Capitol, block the doors at the hearing, get a microphone. And really, quite honestly, I didn't understand right to work at the time. I knew that it was something that the unions didn't want, and it was just another extension of an attack on labor by Scott Walker. But it was really never anything that was fully discussed. So when the individuals who said they would follow me didn't show up at the rendezvous point, I went back downstairs into the Monona Terrace, and there was this lavish setup in the room with food off to one side and chairs in the center and a big ring of construction workers from, probably all 17 building trades, about 2,500 people standing around. And I got a chance to hear Dave Branson say, a nice round of applause for Terry McGowan and Mark Ryle for saving us from right to work 4 years ago when Scott Walker passed Act 10. And it was then that I realized that a deal had been made. And I did some background research, found out these guys were on the governor's workforce investment committee. And then as time would reveal, I saw articles, the book, The Fall of Wisconsin by Mark Kaufman, where Terry McGowan says, I sort of trusted the guy. I'd gone to a grassroots organization meeting where it was basically meet the governor candidates up in Wausau, up ahead of the 2018 elections, probably winter of 2017-18. And I talked to the mayor, I think it was, and she had told me about Scott Walker. We stand with Scott Walker signs being on the heavy equipment in the parade during the recall election over Labor Day, and how somebody had said, that's really not a good idea. Don't float that boat down this river. So I know that there was an agreement, and nobody has denied it. And I've made a lot of notice about that. And by now I figured somebody would have thrown a lawsuit against me if I wasn't telling the truth. But my union wound up kicking me out when I found out what was going on in our union. They were illegally using our healthcare trust fund money. And this happened in March 1st of 2016. And I found out really quick how difficult it is to get any support because, of course, now I'm being blacklisted by the union. I didn't even realize what had happened or what my rights were. But in spite of the right to work law, which isn't being enforced in this state, which says that if you're not a member of a union, you still have to be protected by them, I found out that there is no protection anywhere. Uncovered a right to work law violation scandal that took its way into the Department of Criminal Investigation, where they refused to prosecute it. The WERC, Wisconsin Employment Relations Commission, wouldn't prosecute it. So I became kind of focused on what was going on with this. So getting to why I'm running, there are a lot of good reasons. I want to represent not just the people of the 78th, but statewide, because I think a rep's job by definition is you are a state rep, which means anyone who comes to you should answer your call. So I came to Lisa Subeck, my state rep, and I asked Lisa Subeck to intervene and have the DCI Director of Criminal Litigation, Randy Schneider, who's now an assistant attorney general, call me because I couldn't get him on the phone. I couldn't get the special agent who was involved in the investigation on the phone. And Brian O'Keefe, who's the director of the DCI, wouldn't respond to any of this as well. Well, Lisa never responded, but as this had happened in the illegal ads were being placed, there were two contractors that I found specifically that I wanted investigated. They found numerous violations of the right to work law, which would have been a requirement that you be a member of a union and you pay dues, but they didn't act on it. So the Scott Walker administration, through Brad Schimmel, had the DCI do the investigation. And the reason why Randy Schneider, what he cited was that Total Mechanical out of Pewaukee, apparently an ally of Scott Walker and a supporter, had just received the first contract at Foxconn. And this is what Randy told me. That's the reason why Brad Schimmel had him take this investigation, and they wanted to keep it in-house. What they wanted to do was keep it from the public view through the election of 2018. They wanted Scott Walker to win the election, and then I guess they figured they were going to deal with me however they would. And as it turned out, he didn't win the election. But Lisa Subeck went on, and during that campaign, I hadn't thought much about it. I was just angry that nobody was willing to do anything about this. I got two flyers at our front door, and the flyer had Lisa Subeck being endorsed by Smart International Association of Workers of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation, which is the international and the union that I was a member of for 32 years. And obviously, when you take a look at the whole thing, and there's a lot more information, she sold me out. So I looked at this and I said, how can we have a state representative who's willing to take a special interest group, especially one under investigation, take an endorsement from them, and then be foolish enough to actually put it into her information or literature for her election? So she won herself a challenge in this election when she did that. And she has had zero comment. And quite honestly, it's very difficult getting anyone outside of myself to ask her for a comment on that. But I guess more importantly, the question that I haven't also heard is, why are you running against the Democrat in your own district, an incumbent, aside from Sandy Pope, who's in District 80? And Sandy said flat out to me, why would anyone run against an incumbent? And to your situation, being disenfranchised and having both the Democrats and the Republicans challenge you, these people they really don't want competition that stands a chance at defeating them. So I guess in a nutshell, it has to do with all the labor issues initially. And obviously, we're dealing with crises here in the state that nobody fully understands, and we're not getting straight answers on regarding the coronavirus issue. That's going to be with us for a long time.
So you're running against Lisa Subeck. You're the first challenger she's had since 2016. How do you feel about unopposed elections in general?
Oh, well, I know how they happen. I know that the Assembly Democratic Campaign Committee scores $1,500 on the quarter, or $6,000 a year from each Assembly candidate who flags that banner is a Democrat. I'm presuming the Republicans do exactly the same thing. And they build up a war chest that allows them to do just exactly what they did to you. I know that you received the same legal paperwork that I did from this guy, Richard Puello, who is the executive director of a Assembly Democratic Campaign Committee. They stuck a lot of money into trying to knock us off the ballot. And in your particular instance, listeners, it's important to note that he got attacked from both sides. In my campaign, what happened was Lisa Subeck, just like whoever the Democratic candidate is in your district, benefited from those dollars that were put in by Deb Kolste, and the Democratic Campaign Committee sent out mailings with a letter asking for signatures. So none of those candidates had to do door-to-doors. They were sent to people who the Democratic Party was absolutely aware were either loyal donors or people who were regular voters that they were completely aware of from their list. And it was a sure bet that they were going to get wide response. Subeck claimed that she had 600 people who signed for her. And when she knew that I was a candidate, because she had a heads up on it, she knew that they were going to allow my ballot to go through with the 219 signatures, which would have put me 19 over the top. She posted an email to all the people that she had presumed were her supporters, and I got a hold of the email. And in it, she said that 3 men had challenged her, and that one of them has right-wing ties with organizations and operatives. And then she said that this individual also files unfounded charges against labor unions. Now, labor unions is a big thing in my part of the state. Possibly, I'm assuming yours too, with the Janesville power plant.
Absolutely.
GM plant. And these people still really trust organized labor. And when they hear words like unfounded charges against, hey, if I had any unfounded charges, I'd be getting sued for frivolous lawsuit. I've never been sued by the sheet metal workers. The AFL-CIO has been absolutely hush on this. If I was lying about what I was saying happened, I would have a libel lawsuit, because there's enough in print. You can go look anywhere and see what I've been saying. So I welcome that challenge. Why? Because if I had to go to court over this, I've got documentation to prove just exactly what they did. So to your question, why? Because they make it so darn difficult, and they attack you if you wind up going. If you're going to run for your office, just like you are, Reese. And listeners, I want to tell you, I spent time with Reese. We went to a park halfway between Madison and Janesville, and we sat down, and I got a chance to find out that this man grew up with a family that basically was bred for empathy. You know, all the issues that I talk about, he's on board with. He's seen it before. He's seen the hardship of the GM plant in Janesville going down and what life was like. He's not living in a glass castle someplace with in the lap of luxury. He's real, and he's somebody that you should honestly consider. And I think this is a first chance we're going to ever see of a libertarian holding office in the assembly.
Thanks, Rob. You know, ballot requirements are something that I'm campaigning to address. You know, if elected, it'd be great to, it's likely to fail, but still make a proposal to have the requirements reduced, lowered, eliminated. Any options, I think, should be on the table. How do you feel about the ballot requirements, and what do you think some potential solutions would be?
People would probably argue that a 200 legitimate count for the assembly is an easy number to achieve if you can get support. And what they're looking for is support in the community for the individual who's running. This, the comment that I made when the gentleman from the Elections Commission said, he noted that they really went after you hard. Me, talking about me. They went after you double hard. And I said, sir, I will have to tell you, for those of us who had no option, but we had to go door to door, or we had to go out into the streets to secure our signatures, it was a real challenge. Because of the coronavirus, you were definitely handicapped. Clearly, you see that the methods that they used with direct mailers and heartfelt pleas of, please don't make our valuable Democratic candidates have to go out into the community and risk exposure to coronavirus. They use scare tactics in that regard. And that actually worked to disenfranchise a lot of people who'd come to our door. You know, we come to the door and they where's your mask was one of the comments that was made. And I was keeping my safe social distance. But it was then that I realized that a lot of these people out there were legitimately taking this very serious, as they should. And it creates a huge challenge. So under times like this, I would say it would be appropriate for them to withhold that. I mean, I know that if the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and the legislature would have said no, but clearly what they're trying to do is create a two-party system, just like Steve had said. They have no interest in interlopers who can come in, because both parties look at this and they say this could affect us negatively. So
Right.
getting access, you're always going to be challenged. Reese, get used to it. There will always be that. It's like the gentleman told me, he said, you're going to have to get more signatures next time if you want to avoid this fate. But that doesn't mean it ends with that. I mean, they're going to come after me. I'm sure the Assembly Democratic Campaign Committee is trying to figure out where they're going to spend their money on Lisa in the closeouts to make sure that that count comes. But I would say this, I look at that and I say, why don't we have people actually question what she did? I mean, this is truly a scandal. And it's a scandal where you are too, because clearly it's disenfranchising voters from a choice. If they could get you off the ballot tomorrow, they do it. I think you remember immediately after that event, when I knew that you had been taken off the ballot, I called you and I said, consider a write-in campaign. And I don't know, I'm sure you must have had other people telling you that too, but I'll bet you I was the first person to do that. And folks, I'm telling you, this is a legitimate thing for you to be able to do that. I don't know how it's going to work in the general election with individuals who are going to be caught up in this presidential election and what challenges that will bring you with your ability to score ballot. I hope that it doesn't create a huge problem for you. That's something we get to deal with after August, because I had told you that regardless of where I go with this, I want to make sure you get a fair crack at it. And I'm making myself available to other individuals throughout the state who I've been in communication with, and let them know that I've got free time after August the 11th. And I think that was the advantage for me doing this. Getting right back to the question, it's going to be a challenge figuring out how to make it fair for everyone. I mean, they don't want any walk-ons. They're going to make sure that it's difficult. And we got a chance to see, I had no idea that they were going to do what they did as far as getting those signatures. Lisa Subeck bragging about how she scored 3 times the amount. In your case, I'm going to say that they got so many of those signatures, they must have used some of the signatures that they had to discredit some of your signatures. And I know that they tried 74 out of the 237 that I initially had filed with, and they got 6.
Well, yeah, and with us, we were put just, I believe, 4 signatures under the minimum. But what really doesn't seem right is that the Republican in this race doesn't really find gerrymandering to be an issue, but the Democrat has stated that gerrymandering is very much an issue for her. And in our case, the gerrymandered districts, the 44th district is a jigsaw puzzle piece. It is maybe one of the worst in the state. In our case, that gerrymandered line was used to put us under the required amount to have our ballot access. They were all Janesville residents that were challenged. The 44th district is Janesville. There are very few parts of it that are not the area of Janesville, and every signature, besides 3 or 4 signatures that were the Clinton area, and I believe 1 Beloit, everything was a Janesville resident, and they were all challenged. So, we did our best, but our campaign we're not a big budget campaign. We're a grassroots campaign. We don't have someone dedicated to oversight on every single signature. We did our best, and we worked up until the last minute, and we turned in our signatures the following morning. And we were originally approved with 209 by the Election Commission. It did take additional effort by each party. They had to look signature by signature and compare it in my vote. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of resource. And they had only a couple days to do this. And for some reason, my campaign was worth coming after. Out of all the campaigns in the state, I was the only campaign to be challenged by both parties. So it's definitely been a lesson for me moving ahead. We're going to try to get over the amount of signatures. But as I told you, I'm kind of against this part of the process. I do believe that it should be either lowered, possibly even eliminated. I can't imagine how many people during these protests and all the issues we've had this year, how many people considered running for office, but then didn't run for office because they couldn't. If they were in the know and went to look for what the first step is, they realized that there's too many requirements in place, and they said, I can't afford to do all of this. So we don't see a lot of people running. I think I know why we don't see people running. A lot of people aren't making elections and ballot requirements their priority for political issues they want to address, but it's very much an important issue. I want to see more issues be represented. We know there are a lot of issues that just go overlooked, and that has to do with the amount of people running, trying to represent all of us in elections. We got to start talking about that, and that's one of our issues we're trying to push. And I don't know how many other candidates are really concerned about this. As you've said, incumbents don't want to talk about it because as long as they stay elected, there are plenty of ways to stay elected, and it works. There's a system in place, which brings me to my next question. You and I have something in common. We believe that a certain amount of elected independents in the legislature would be a good thing for the state. I've said on the record that one independent, any number beyond one or more would be great. How do you feel about elected independents within the legislature?
I think that given what we had discussed earlier, you touched upon the gerrymandering. And the gerrymandering does two things. If the party in power in the legislature gets to decide what those districts are going to, those lines are going to look like, and the governor has veto power, which means, I guess theoretically they could work back and forth. It's going to depend on how much power the governor is willing to exercise. And under those circumstances, it would be easy for them to find something flaw with the governor that they could highlight and then weaken him during that process. That gerrymandering makes safe districts for Democrats and Republicans. And right now, basically, if you hold a seat in the Assembly or the Senate, unless you have a scandal that somebody can capitalize on, you're going to hold that seat regardless because you have the power of incumbency, and nobody in their right mind is generally going to run against you. So having an independent in there really, or taking districts where, let's just say the Democratic Party knows they're never going to get a Democrat in a district, but they've got a Republican that they absolutely cannot work with. People within the districts who vote and kind of throw their vote away every year as a Democrat in a district that's 54, 56% Republican, and there's no chance in heck you're going to get a Democrat in there, should be looking at independents, and they should be looking at moderate conservatives who will bring our balance back in our state. The thing that I've recognized is there's this extremism. Very few of these individuals are allowed to do anything outside of leadership. Leadership holds a pretty tight gun to their head and tells them how things are going to be. And if you and I realize that maybe 10 or 15% of all the people in a party have extreme beliefs and they want them represented, the leadership that they choose is going to make sure that that's what they get. So until the Republicans fall into a balance somewhere, or if the Democrats wind up winning big and all of a sudden have power, it's going to be the same power trip that Scott Walker had. All of a sudden, Tony Evers can get anything done that he wants done, and he'll push whatever agenda he has. So having independents in there, people who can actually say, if you could actually go onto a floor and call somebody a liar when they're a liar without worrying about losing a committee, honestly, I don't care if I get a committee assignment when I get in there. Obviously, I know certain things like the back of my hand from life's experience. When you're 58 years old in November, when the actual general comes up, you've already lived 58 years in Wisconsin, and you've got a good idea about what life is like, and maybe a little less for you, but at least you got your good looks. So I wind up looking at this and going, there's a lot of capital you can have. If I can beat Lisa Subeck, if Lisa Subeck decided she's had enough because she doesn't want to destroy her political future with the scandal, and if she can walk away intact, people are going to be looking around going, what the heck did that guy just get done? And I'm not deluding myself. I've seen the double down from my union. I know that's the same thing with corruption in law enforcement. They never answer the question. They always go to the next tactic to try to figure out how to escape whatever challenges they're facing. And that's what politics has become too. So I don't delude myself into thinking anything more than having independence in there and people who feel free to speak because they know that the term limits that they get in their district are truly going to belong to the voters, not to the candidates anymore. So yeah, absolutely. I look forward to working with you in the assembly, Reese.
Likewise. Before I let you go, I want to let you tell people where they can find you on the web. You have a website. I know you have some social media presence. Where can people follow you?
Facebook. I have, if you would Google Slamka for Assembly, you'll find me on Facebook. You can go to robslamka.com. So ROBSLAMKA.com. And you know, what's interesting about any of these social media sites is I know that there are people out there who want to talk to us and talk to you, and we are absolutely approachable. It's so easy to pick up a phone. I typically answer the phone on the first ring. I'm in a 608 district, and generally if I see something from out of district, I might be a little leery about it. But if it's a Wisconsin number, I know it's somebody might be calling about those issues. So I'm really easy to get to. If anybody's out there and they want my phone number, I'll give it to you right now. It's 414-349-9043. And as long as you keep it between the nines, I'm pretty happy. You know, I said nobody wants a phone call at 10 o'clock unless it's a crisis. But that's the beauty of being able to do what we do, Reese. You know, we can make ourselves accessible and actually serve people with the intent that government was supposed to provide. I'm very disappointed with my state rep, and I think that we can do a lot better here. And I would encourage people to challenge that theory, and feel free to reach out to her too. Give her a call and find out why she would have that crazy endorsement from the union that kicked me out. Crazy.
All right, Rob. I'll talk to you later. I appreciate you joining. Everybody, make sure you follow Rob and keep up with him. The primary's coming up. Rob's the challenger for the 78th Assembly District. Rob, thank you again.
Thank you, Reese. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. All right, and I'm going to close out by just saying one last thing. If you are watching this, you know, if you're considering supporting the other candidates, maybe you already have. If you're aware of the 44th Assembly race, I am offering the other candidates in this race a chance to join me in a live stream, public discussion, a forum, even a debate. This race is between Republican Dwayne Severson, Democrat Sue Conley, and voters do have a third option. Our campaign will be a write-in campaign. I know that's asking the voter to do a little extra when it comes time to vote, but voters do deserve a third option in this election, and that's what we're trying to offer. So I will continue to work for your support. I know that the Democrat in this race has said that she is a candidate for all the people and will serve all, but I believe our campaign is the only campaign that is moderate in this election, and I'm open to a honest discussion with any of the candidates, any constituents in this district. If you'd like, reach out to me anytime through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the social media platforms. You can also go to reesewood4assembly.com. I am easy to get a hold of. We're running on transparency, accountability, a better economy, criminal justice reform, and election reform. So that's all I have, and we will try to do these again next week. I want to have a couple guests on. If you know someone would make a good guest, somebody possibly in the Janesville area, the 44th district, or maybe someone in Wisconsin that has an issue related to our upcoming elections. This is the platform. We're going to talk about it all the way through the election. I'm going to do these videos. So thank you for watching.